Okay, so for the first about 5 or 10 minutes, I could ask everyone just close your laptops. I'm gonna go over some basics. I don't want anyone to get lost a little bit after. I actually worked with Zoe over there. Everyone wave hi to Zoe, my girlfriend Zoe. I ran this presentation on her on Sunday, and she was able to complete it. And not only does she not want to be an engineer, but she's also not interested in being one. So I'm excited today to show you all this. So a little bit of background. Today we're going to go over something called Github Actions, but more in a general sense. We're going to start going over the basics to ops, operations. You might hear the phrase, you might hear the word DevOps kind of thrown around a bit. This is kind of the intro to that. So background about me is I spent about the last 10 years working at a bunch of different companies out in California and in Canada. I worked at NFL, I worked on superbowl.com, I worked on the NFL, iOS, and mobile apps. Also spent some time working at System1, where we worked on websites like mapquest.com, howstuffworks.com. So like websites that get millions and millions and millions of people visiting them, and on engineering teams with like 30 engineers, 40 engineers, 50 engineers, that scale. Also got to work on cool, fun, really early stage startups. So I was like employee number 10 at one called GoGuardian that now has like 300 or 400 people and is worth $1 billion. I was an early employee at another startup called Remo, where I was like leading the engineering team. So I've seen everything from like when you have a team of like 2 engineers to when you have a team of 100 engineers. And when you're scaling the team and you want to get everyone on board, it's this kind of stuff, this operations stuff, this DevOps stuff, makes a huge, huge difference. So, kind of an intro for ops. Imagine building a car, right? So back in the day, how did we build a car? We would get 100 people in a room, and we tell them just to build a car. Unsurprisingly, you can't build very many cars very quickly if you just get a bunch of people in the room and tell them to build a car. However, pretty much every company I go to, every startup I go to, that's how they tell their engineers to build websites. They just get like 20 engineers in a room. They're like, hey man, just build a website. And then what happens? Same as what happens when you try to build a car. People start like bumping into each other. People will work on the same file and there'll be conflicts. And usually what will happen is there'll be one engineer, one really early engineer. I like to call him the Captain America engineer. And the reason why I like to call him that is, have you all seen the Avengers? Everyone seen Avengers? Okay. So Captain America, there's a scene, Captain America's talking to Iron Man. He's talking about how he was frozen in time. He's like, oh, I was in like this plane and I crash landed into the snow and I got frozen. And Iron Man says, why didn't you just eject? Like, why didn't you just hit the eject button? So the Captain America engineer on these teams, they're the engineers who feel like they have to put the whole weight of the world on their shoulders. And what will happen is these early engineers, usually they're the only person who can deploy the website. And so you have these issues where you'll have like 10 engineers all working on features, and then the Captain America engineer sitting there spending like 2-3 hours trying to deploy the website from a bunch of scripts on his computer. Well, you can't hire 100 engineers and have one bottleneck person for deploying. So today I'm going to teach you guys to leverage this tool called Github Actions. Github Actions is like the robots in our factory. So instead of having the one person deploy the website, we're going to teach these robots how to deploy the website for us. And so that way, everyone in the team can focus on delivering more features faster instead of like fiddling around trying to deploy sites. So at the end of this, you'll have something like this. Down 1 second. By the end, everyone will have a beautiful websites here. Just create a React app. Today we're only going to focus on the ops side. We're not going to focus on applications code. So if you don't know React, you don't know JavaScript, you don't know HTML, you don't know CSS, you don't know any coding, completely fine. We're only going to work on the GitHub Action side. And more importantly though, in GitHub, you'll see these kind of views by the end of class. So here is logs of all our robots, all our GitHub Actions as I was like working on this. Picking up the changes to the site, building it, and then deploying it and putting it up here. So I didn't have to like run any scripts on my machine. This was all done automatically. So to get started, I want everyone, oh, that's developer mode. I want everyone to open up their laptops and go to jameshush.com/blog. And you'll see I have the workshop notes right at the top, GitHub Actions. There we go. And has anyone here not made a GitHub account yet? Raise your hands. Nobody? Everyone's made a GitHub account? Okay, cool. So I'm going to do a little bit demo first, and then I'll leave it to you guys. So first, we're going to open up this link here, the github.com/jam/intro to GitHub Actions. We'll open it up here. And we're going to set up GitHub. We're going to fork it and set up GitHub pages. So to fork it, once we click to this page, we're just going to go to, am I already logged in? We're going to hit this fork button, and it's going to ask us to make a copy of this code to our GitHub account, because everyone's going to have their own separate website at the end of this, so that's why we need to make a copy. And then after we hit fork, we're going to go back to this page, hit settings, hit pages, and then make sure that this branch is set to GH pages. So everyone can spend like the next 5-10 minutes trying to get that going. I'll be walking around, help you all out to make sure everyone's clicking on the right stuff. So we're going to open up the code you just forked. So it's not going to say Jamsey, it's going to say your username up here. And I'm going to show you a trick. You can do this on any page on GitHub. If you change .com in the URL to .dev and hit enter, it opens up a text editor in your web browser. So now this way you don't, this blew my mind when I learned this. It blew my mind. So it opens up a text editor in your web browser, and that way you don't have to worry about cloning it or anything on your machine. You don't have to worry about like not having the right development environments or anything. So once we open that up, we're going to open this package JSON file. And here, it's going to say something like your username here. We're going to erase this and replace it with your GitHub username. Step by step. We're going to go to home page. We're going to change home page to your username. Okay, I'll give everyone like a minute or two to do that. Let me know if anyone's having trouble on this part. Looks good? Okay, next. I'm going to make a new folder. So to make a new folder, we hit this little folder button. And we're going to type .github/workflow. And then inside here, we're going to make a new file. I'm going to click this file, and we're going to call it ci.yml. CI stands for continuous integration, which is just a fancy way of like saying automation. Okay? I'm going to walk around and make sure everyone's made that file, because if it's not made in that folder, it doesn't work. Let's see. Okay, and ready? You guys ready for the hard part? Ready for the hard part? Hard part? Okay, pay special attention. This is a trick I learned working as a senior engineer for about 10 years now. What you want to do is, see this code? You want to copy it, and then, so do all the day. This is real industry experience right here. We're going to copy it and then paste it. Copy and paste. Expert. So now I'm going to, everyone raise your hand if you've copied and pasted the files at all. Everyone's copied and pasted? Okay, Zoe, I know you're not, because you're working on your Chinese essay right now. You've already done this. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go through and explain each of these lines now. because it looks like a whole lot of stuff all at once. So first things first, what's a YAML file? This isn't JavaScript, is it? Like, what is this? So YML is a markup language. The ML stands for markup language, just like HTML, same thing. HTML, hypertext markup language. YML is, I don't know what the Y stands for, but it's markup language. And you'll see these a lot in configuration files. So I think Ruby on Rails has some of these, but different frameworks will use something like this. And this, just like HTML, it's not really a programming language. It's more of a way to give the computer very direct instructions. So on the first line, can everyone see, is this big enough for everyone? Okay, cool. First line, we're giving the GitHub Action a name. I called it GitHub Actions Build and Deploy Demo. You can actually call this whatever you want, but we can keep it the same here. The next here, from lines 2 to 5, I'm defining a hook. So has everyone worked with React at all? Okay, maybe one or two. So it's similar to the React lifecycle hooks, no big deal if you haven't. But instead of like on component update, we're doing whenever there's a push, whenever we're pushing code from our computer or from anywhere to a branch that's called main, we want to run these jobs, okay? So main is the default name for any new repos made on GitHub. If you're working on an older repo, it might be called master instead. So we could say whenever it's pushed to main or pushed to master, we're gonna run these jobs. So this is setting up, this is telling our like little machine robot, okay, we wanna run this whenever code changes on master. So what exactly do we wanna run? This is where we're gonna define the jobs, okay? So I'll show you the UI, what this looks like in the UI. So you see here, this is one job called build and deploy. So whatever we call this, that name will change here. So it's really common. Let's say, for example, you wanted a separate job to run like automated end-to-end tests after it was built and deployed. Then you could add a second job, call it automated tests, and then define what that does. But for tonight, we're only going to stick to one job. One job's plenty to do. So from here, we're going to define the environment of where the job runs. So just like how some of us has MacBooks, some of us have Windows machines, maybe somebody has Linux installed over here too. We have to tell GitHub like what kind of operating system we're using. Now this is especially important if you're doing anything with iOS development, because the only way to build an iOS app is on a MacBook. It's impossible to build an iOS app on any other operating system. For any web project, so anything with React, anything with PHP, anything with Angular, anything pretty much from any coding bootcamp, you can't really go wrong with Ubuntu latest. This is just Linux for all intents and purposes. So I'm going to do the same thing. Since it's just a web project, we're going to use Ubuntu latest. Now, from here, next step is defining the steps. So we've said what the job is, or say like where it runs. We're going to go through the steps. So the steps, we have 1, 2, 3 different steps with 3 different names. So first step is checkout. And this is, if you've ever developed code on your machine and used Git to do like Git pull origin master, this is pretty much what this is doing. And this shows kind of a cool feature of GitHub Actions. Not only can I define steps, but I can use other people's steps who are smarter than me to help me use my code. So for this example, this action slash checkout, if we go to Google, actually if we go to GitHub action slash checkout, this is the source code for this step. So any GitHub repo that has a GitHub action, you can just reference here. You don't need to download anything. You just put a link to it, and it'll use that step. And if you want to see what kind of different features you can use with this step, it'll all explain here. For this project and 95% of projects, you can pretty much use the defaults and be safe, okay? So this was great. We didn't have to code anything. We could use somebody else's code who was smarter than us. Whenever we can use somebody else's code who's smarter than us, we're gonna have a good time. Next step, this is an example of a custom step, okay? So this is, we're gonna give it the name install, test, and build. And then what I'm doing here is I'm adding this little bar. So this is telling the GitHub action, hey, I'm gonna write some bash commands here, and I want you to run each bash command one at a time. So we're running npm install ci test. This goes into the internet and downloads any of the dependencies we need to make the project run, and we're running npm run build. And these are both commands that are just in these scripts. Now, for like, say if you're doing a Rails project or a PHP project, you might want to write composer install for PHP. For Rails, I think it's like bundle install. But here, it's like anything you would manually have to type on your machine to prepare the project before you deployed it, we're writing here. So this is building the code and getting it ready. And then final step is release step. This is actually one of my nice features of GitHub Actions is you can use emojis. And so I always like to put emojis whenever I can, brighten people's day. And this is a good example. As you can see here, it's using this uses field. And it's using another person's GitHub action. Again, we're leveraging other people's code who are smarter than us to make our jobs easier. And so this person, I found this like just open source. He actually has a GitHub action that just deploys stuff to GitHub pages. So remember earlier on, we changed the setting on the pages and we set the branch name. This is how we're connecting it together. So here we're telling GitHub, hey, once it's done building, upload it to this branch and use whatever's in the build folder to host our website. Okay? So that was a whole lot. Any questions, any concerns, any panic right now? Clearish? Okay. So now we've got the code copied and pasted. It's time to save it and see if it works. So to save, we're going to make a git commit and just commit directly to the main branch. So to do that, we're going to click on this source control button here, and everyone can write a commit message. I'm going to say, we call it like create GitHub action, and then hit the check mark to commit. And then once it's been committed, we go back to, actually we can just duplicate this tab and change the dev back to com and head over to actions, and we should see our action running. Okay. Let's see here, commits. Okay, so we should see commit here. So everyone try committing it and then head over back to your code and head back to this page and see if it's shown up here. So I'll give everyone a couple minutes to do that. I'll be right over walking by to help out.
Okay, so I actually ran into a problem here. It's not detecting my action. So we're gonna do some live debugging. So let's figure this out. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. So what I'm trying to do is I know there's an issue on the hook. Because it's not, what I'm expecting is the action to run in this actions panel. So I actually have some code here from 4 days ago that was running. Okay, so in this branch, so this code's working. So if you can see here, let's see. You know what, I think I might have misspelled workflow. I think it might be workflows. Give me a moment. Wait, don't change it yet. Rename. I bet you that's it though. Okay, if this works, I'll guide you all through, don't worry. Let's see if this does it. That was it. Okay. Okay, watch. I'll guide you all through. So we'll go back. The issue was I spelled it workflow instead of workflows. So we're gonna go back to our repo, go to github.dev, open up the text editor. I think y'all already have this open, so that's fine. And then we're gonna head here. We're gonna right click, we're gonna rename to workflows with an S, hit enter, and go to source control, and give a commit message, rename workflow to workflows. Hit the check mark. Okay, so I'll help you guys all out with this. It's a little bit of a curveball. So now we're going to enjoy the fruits of our labor here. Just to play around, we're going to open source. We're going to open app.tsx. And just for fun, I'm going to change the learn React line to whatever message you want, like, hey. And then hit source control, say add new message. Save it. And now, if we go back to GitHub, you'll see in the code this little yellow thing is saying, oh, it's running a job. So this is our factory building our website. And now it's starting to go through every single job name. So you remember, here's the checkout. And we can see the logs for the checkouts, copying our code. This is install and build test. So it's running npm ci test, npm run build. So this is like watching the car being built in the factory in real time. And this logs page is, when I was spending my time, especially doing a lot of DevOps work, I'd spend so much time in these logs pages. Because if one of these commands go wrong, this is where you'll find the output. So we can see it's building here. Another nice thing about operationalizing tasks like this and putting them into GitHub Actions is instead of having an engineer kind of sit there and watch, we can see issues in real time. Now, okay, we got an error. So why did we get an error? Oh, okay. We got an error because one of the unit tests was wrong. It's actually looking for the word learn React. Yeah. So no big deal. So it didn't deploy. So this is an example of the test failed, so it won't deploy the code. So in the real world, that's great. If you have a test that fails, you don't want code to be deployed to production. But for us, we want to change that. So what we can do is go back to our code here, open up the unit test, app.test.tsx, and instead of have it learn React, we can change the message here to hi. And hi link. And then go back to here. So what I want everyone to try to do is try editing this app.tsx file. If you don't want to mess with the unit test, just change anything between lines 10 and 12. And just write some sort of fun message. Commit the code and then see if the code gets uploaded. And if you run into an error with your GitHub Action, just hit me up and I'll help walk you through it. So if the test doesn't pass, it doesn't get pushed. So that's one of the things I bring to every organization. I say, like, let's test the code before we release it. So we're actually already automatically testing it. So if you go to that GitHub Action file, the ci.yml file, npm install-ci-test, what that is, that's a built-in npm command that installs everything and tests it. And so the way the test works is if you go to package.json, there's a script called test. So npm test or npm install ci test runs this command. And this command just runs another test script. And so what this is saying, go through all my code and run every file that has the word .test in it under the covers. So that's an example of when you have a GitHub action, if a new person joins the team and there's like 100,000 lines of code and they don't know what the heck's going on, they don't have to worry about causing the whole website to collapse. Because if they do make like a mistake, all the tests that everyone's already written will check everything in advance. Yeah. Okay, so that wraps up everything for tonight. If you're more curious and want to learn more about this GitHub Action stuff, I do have another branch called workshop-02 that has some extra features that shows running this GitHub action in a pull request. But if you're like interested, if you liked what you saw and you want to learn more about like operations, shipping software, not just like making the application, but making sure the app actually works for like hundreds of thousands or millions of people, at the bottom of the page, I got a cute little form. If you put your name and email,
you'll get like a little email course sent once a week for 5 weeks that goes through like GitHub Actions, goes through feature flags, goes through setting up monitoring, and just the basics for ops. So if you're interested in that, hit your name and email. Also, I send a newsletter like once a week, once every 2 weeks. I'll put like a link to my podcast. I put a link to like different events I'm doing around Taiwan. Duncan knows, he's subscribed, happy subscriber. But thanks again for your time. Me and Harrison is going to be here for another like 15 minutes or so. And so if you want to play around or ask me any questions, you're open. But thanks again. That's it for now.